the things and processes of life. In a sense, what I'm saying is I try to be compassionate, but smart about being compassionate too, practical, equanimous, just, intelligent about compassion. Because compassion, whether the intelligence, sometimes can get us in big trouble. Or in another way of putting it, if I see somebody drowning, I need to make sure that I don't drown myself and everybody around me in trying to save that drowning individual. Because the social contract, we have to consider the individual and the collective all at the same time in a harmonic yin yang. So I understand what you're saying, and I agree with that. We have to be compassionate. We have to understand the suffering of others, but what we do about it, I always say that we have to do it with proper circumspection and rationality and critical thinking, for sure. So both things at the same time, yin yang. Interesting discussion, for sure. Mike, what's going on in your life? We haven't seen you in a while, so there's some updating to be had.
Let's see. I don't know. On the philosophical side, maybe not a whole lot. We on the personal side, still trying to work towards building a house. I don't know if everybody knows our backstory, but Hurricane Michael destroyed our house, and we've been kind of in a rental situation ever since. And we bought a lot, and we've been planning the design, and just can't seem to get off the ground, though. I got a builder that I want to use, and I don't know, with materials and logistics, kind of being goofed up right now with the supply chains. Once the supply chains, I've got some critical. So anyway, that's kind of personal life.
Yeah, I was just talking about that, Mike. I was telling Joe and the rest of the group here that I have seen a great disruption to the network of supplies, things, services. While I don't, I haven't seen the pandemic around me. I haven't seen any, like half of the people that I know have been sick or died. I have seen a great disruption to the commerce, the exchange of goods and services, like I've never seen in my life. Incredible hikes in prices. Metal went up 350%. Stainless steel, the same, and you can't find it. Not only it's of course, it goes together. You can't find it, so it goes up exponentially. But you can't find transport. FedEx doesn't deliver on time anymore. It's like, okay, it may be a couple of days, or it may be a week, or we may lose it and deal with it because we have too many problems going on. And that's what I see around me. That I see very clearly.
Yeah, there's no recourse because there's
what
not
are you
a
going to do?
There's no competition that would change your outcome. Yeah. I don't know I didn't really catch the gist of the exchange you and Joel were having as far as those perspectives, but I suspect that some of it may be related to some thoughts that I have. I don't know how far I'd take it, but I feel like we're in a position of consolidation hour globally, and consolidation hour I find that to be more of a concern than a comfort. Just the nature of man, and what power does to
it is clear. it is clear that power / money, they go together. You're not powerful if you don't have shit. If you have a lot of shit, you can be powerful, and if you're powerful, you can have a lot of shit. They're the same thing, the same ring, that binds them all. And it is true. It is clear that money, power, money, is self-corrupting. I watch the Lord of the Rings quite often, not because I find it entertaining. It's just I just find the psychological and philosophical underpinnings of it so true. The ring has always been awoken since we bit into the apple of knowledge of good and evil. The ring wants to be found. Power, money is self-corrupting, and whoever falls into that under the I would say the spell of it is doomed. And yes, the bigger the ring, the more the hobbits suffer. We need the hobbits. And it's of concern. It is of concern to see how unilaterally power, the authorities can say, hey, from now on, you got to do this. No questions asked. And it's a little scary in a sense. I am very philosophical, as you all know, and I find power within myself, away from the ring. I find power within myself to decide what I think and how I think. That's no power is going to take that away from me. They can kick me in the ass. They can make me do things. They can keep me away from other things. They have that. The power has that power over me, but power does not have the power of my will, my consciousness, my individual consciousness, which is not mine, by the way, but the consciousness that's between these two ears, to be specific, it cannot be taken away unless I relinquish it. So that's where I find my power, and I'm not afraid. That's why I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of sickness. I'm not afraid of pain. I freed myself from that. But it's all metaphysical, of course. It's philosophical.
Luis, with that, under that mind frame, like you're okay. But now, what about any obligation you might have to others, and what influence you should bring in the consideration of others?
Because I understand the social contract, I play by the rules. I may not accept them. So I wear the mask when I'm told. I don't go to places that don't let me go. So I play the game, but I'm not in the game, in a sense. So I follow the rules like a good citizen, but I'm not stupid to the sense that I think that everything that I'm told to do or made to do is right or just or equanimous or anything. So I play by the rules of society. I'm a nice guy. I'm civic. I am democratic. I am humanistic. But that doesn't mean I drink Kool-Aid.
Right.
So
welcome, Mike Taylor.
Morning, Mike.
Yes. Morning. I hear you talking about power and how terrible it is. At the same time, so far as I can tell, there is a deep and tremendous need amongst the vast majority of people, so far as I can tell, to have leaders. There is an important need in society to have some sort of concentration or concentrations of power, because most people want to get on with their lives, and they want somebody in charge,
Somebody else to lead.
who is sorting out the mess.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, it is certainly true, as you pointed out, and as Lord Acton said, that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Absolutely. I see that a lot, Mike. You're absolutely right.
So it seems to me, one of the fundamental problems of our history and our civilization and our society is how to get these conflicting circumstances to fit together in some way with which we are reasonably satisfied.
Let me ask you this question, Mike. Does a leader need to have a leader?
Well, the difficulty with dealing that particular question is you have leader one, then he has leader two, and after a while you get up to leader infinity and he's in charge and you can't go any further because you run out of people. Okay, so I think that's probably the wrong way to think about things. Let me go on a little bit further.
Yes.
The way that we have tried to deal with that in different societies, particularly in this country and in countries in Europe, is we have tried to take the power and split it up into centers of power so that you have a situation in which you have a large number of centers of power. And if you have things working right, they can act as restraints one on another. Now, the problem is that situation can get unbalanced. In our present American society, as so far as I can tell, we are in a situation where most of the power has shifted to the people with money, and where, in effect, most of the people who have no money really, although they cast a vote, have no real representation in the government.
Absolutely true. But we go back to the original question of that individuals want to relinquish their own leadership and power to have somebody else take care of business. That's what happens. We are so busy, so preoccupied, living our own little life, our own individual circle of existence, that we don't want to have the responsibility and the hard work on doing all the right things all the time and playing the game with others. So we just go ahead and say, have somebody else take care of this. I see this because I manage a business. For example, I have my own little world of power. I am the Lord of the Ring. But in my case, I contend that I am a humanistic Lord, very democratic, very humanistic, and I manage the company that I manage in terms of philosophical, psychological, ontological goodness. And I see it all the time, that people don't want to make decisions. They don't want to do the stuff that needs to be done. They want somebody else to do it. What I do see a lot is, this is messed up. This guy is responsible for that, and that guy is responsible for that, and that other guy, and everybody's stupid. I'm the only one that's very smart. I don't do anything about it, but I can see everybody's fault. I always ask this question of any individual that has a gripe. If you were the only human being on this planet, who would you be able to blame for your misgivings about staying alive. The lions, the bears,
Yes.
the weather. You would have to point the finger at some invisible God. Holy moly! Look at the lightning. That guy's, what's going on here? So we always, in Spanish, we have that expression, balones fuera, just like the defense of a soccer team that, push the ball away, kick the can down. And that's what most people do. They don't want to take ownership of their own leadership. Somebody else to fix the problem and then point fingers and say, this is really messed up. What are we doing? What are we doing about it? That's the what are we doing? Is the way to go through this difficult, fast-changing environment. So there, I want to thank Kaido again for hosting this beautiful get-together on Saturdays. I send you all my my compassion, my love, and my critical thinking. And I wish I could hear you from about 5 or 6 days talking about these things.
Let me rephrase your last comments. I have noticed that most people do not learn unless they are in pain.
It's also true. That is so true. A Spanish philosopher of 50% Indian origin, Paniker, was his name. He said, human suffering is the existential alarm clock. What he said is that...
Yeah. Samuel Johnson once famously said, nothing concentrates a man's faculties like the knowledge that he will be hanged in a fortnight.
By the way, before I go in, I really need to go. Mike, thank you very much for bringing W.T. Stace into my life.
Mm-hmm.
His book, Mysticism and Philosophy, is phenomenal. I recommend it to anyone. And I thank you for that. He, basically everything that I try to say was elegantly written by him in this book that you pointed out for me. Thank you.
Okay. I had more in mind Stace's other book, The Teachings of the Great Mystics. Okay.
Yes.
But yes, he is well known as a philosopher of mysticism, and he has interesting and worthwhile things to say.
I mean, I could have written that book. Not that I'm that smart, but if I had to really verbalize, take the time to put it down in beautiful sentences like he did in the research that he did, because the guy spent a lot of times researching I cannot disagree with him on any account. The mystic experience where the mind, where reality just sees itself beyond the filter of consciousness, of the conventional logical, experiential, the six senses. I mean, he describes it with extreme beauty, extreme beauty. So, guys, I have to go. I hate to go, but I have to go. Thank you, everybody, Joe, and for allowing me to re-perspectivize your views on what's going on up there in Canada. And thank you, everybody, for being there. I love you all, and we will see you next Saturday at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, if Jairo doesn't fall asleep.
I woke up late.
Did you record anything today?
I recorded the last 30 minutes.
Okay, good. All right. I'm looking forward to listening to myself like a smart monkey. Make sure I didn't miss anything. All right, guys. We'll see you soon. You too. Take care. Always. And I'm going to buy your book. I'm not going to understand it, but I'm going to buy it. I call it.
You can use it to level tables.
Hey, that's geometry right there.
Either that or display it ostentatiously on your coffee table.
Look what I have.
No, and say,
look what I'm reading.
You can tell your guest that you bought it to have a little light reading.
Just to entertain myself during tea time.
Yes, and you have found it to be a perfect cure for insomnia.
Okay, guys. See you soon.
We'll see
and
you.
you're a friend of the author.
Yes.
Louis, I want to plant a seed for you to chew on before you leave. So back to the whole idea of power and things like that. So here's my perspective. We talked about the corruption that power brings in man. And so the American agreement is a constitutional republic. We essentially, no one had anything to gain by setting up a fair playing field that ensured balance of power and protected against the corruption that man would bring to it. And the other thing that I think about is something from scripture where it says, where there's no vision, the people perish. So people are willing to contribute in different levels, and people are talented and passionate in different ways. You've got to have vision, and then people can decide where they fit into that vision, either completely uninvolved or heavily involved.
Yes.
The concern that I have with at least when we talk about America, which is very influential globally, is that everything's become a popularity contest, and nobody's really willing to commit to
a vision.
A vision, and nobody's willing to concede to the balances that we put in place to protect against the nature of
corruption.
Man.
Yeah. Our own self-corruption. Yes.
And so anyway, just some thoughts that we do, at least the Americans on the line, we did live in a country that tries to do something about that, but everybody's, that sees that, where, you start consolidating power too much at an individual level, you start putting yourself at risk.
I'll throw a seed back at you, Mike. There are two types of knowledge. Knowledge shall set you free. So the truth, i.e. knowledge about what is, shall set you free. There are two types of knowledge: conventional knowledge, technical knowledge, praxis knowledge, down to earth, technical, scientific, et cetera, knowledge. How to make money knowledge, and how to invest it in all the stuff that is mundane. But there's another knowledge which is not mundane, not conventional. It's unconventional. It's metaphysical. It is transcendental. It is mystical. And that is the one knowledge that will set a human mind free from the power of the ring. the power of money and power itself. So in order to have a vision, you have to have knowledge. I would say that vision is transcendental knowledge that piggybacks on conventional knowledge. So in order to have vision, you have to have knowledge, but you not necessarily get vision by having knowledge. So you have to build on top of that. And that's the only way out. The only way out is metaphysical, transcendental, purely humanistic, based on core values and those have to be absolutely universal. Nonviolence, equanimity, justice, love for the hell of love, a contract between reality and reality, with us and the whole with us, and that's where I would take that. We don't have a lot of knowledge. Most people don't have a lot of education. If you think about it, our democracy is based on the vote of a lot of people that don't know much. They don't think much, and definitely when we talk about these things, they run away. So how the quality of a democracy, the quality of a human being in the individual level and at the collective level, when we talk about democracy or the planet or our species, is built upon conventional knowledge and definitely on transcendental, metaphysical, purely in the world of ideas and core values that are difficult to understand. And when we don't have that, we have what we have. We have what we see left and right. How do we get the whole collective to get to this level of thinking? It takes a lot of work, a lot of education, a lot of fair society, a lot of taking people out of misery, redistribution of the efforts of each one within their own realm of capacity, and where everybody has a chance. No one is left behind, to use a politician's
Perhaps
word.
The power, the consolidation of power that exists today is not interested in resolving that, because
That is correct.
That's opportunity.
That's right. That's the problem. That is the problem. The power wants more power and more money. Of course, it doesn't realize that it's its own doom. How can you be happy in hell? But that's the problem with that. And the problem is that, and I do believe in democracy very strongly, where everybody has something to say and bring into the collective effort. If everybody thought more in terms of, is this right, rather than is this going to make more money and give me more power, then we'll be in a different kind of movie.
And I'll tell you the risk that I see, that being too focused on democracy, is that democracy tends to be nearsighted, and people that are nearsighted, that can't see the big picture, can be manipulated, and then they'll find themselves in a situation that they never intended for. So there's got to be a balance.
Put me in charge.
The nearsighted, the farsightedness, and to me, that's where it's critical to have protections that take some power away.
Yeah, put me in charge, and I'll fix all this mess. Of course, somebody's going to find a way to shoot the hell out of me, unless I'm very careful, because you don't mess around with a ring. So, but I have great ideas to fix the world. Everything is laid out in my mind. I have no question in my mind that it can be done. I am a terrible optimist.
I had a friend once who said if they just gave him enough soldiers, machine guns, and barbed wire, he would turn this country into a paradise.
Oh boy. No, my weapons would be schools, that three fundamental things: education, healthcare, and guaranteed work. That would be my first approach. Education, good healthcare, and guaranteed work. So we all, and then of course I would have to have the special services for people that don't want to work. Those we need to re-educate. It's like, hey, dude, we're all this together. You have to do something. I don't know what you're gonna do, but you're gonna do something, because that's the way it works in the collective. We all pull in the same direction. That's what anyway, now I really need to go. I love you guys.
Okay.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Take care, guys.
So it's quiet.
Yes. Now you need to arrange, Jairo, for each of these meetings to make sure that every time you bring someone who can't stop talking to keep the meeting going.
So what would we like to talk about today?
Whose reputation can we shred?
Whose reputation can we shred? Mine.
No, you're here. We have to do it with someone who isn't around to defend themselves.
Usually the self, Mike, maybe. We'll just sit here and let everybody else allow themselves to rip into oneself, and we won't defend or attack them. We'll let them do it themselves, and they can learn something. Usually that's an excuse to avoid oneself. That's why humans are usually caught up in drama. And let me prove myself better than others, but I've never questioned this self. If a person can ever get to that point where they can rip themselves, go upside of them, downside, across the heart, then we just start the game. So, but when we worry about, democracy, it's never been proven, even in its theory, that we work. But yet, an empire is so caught up in commerce, hence why they're able to deal with other isms, communism, socialism, which is a bit of both. So until people realize democracy in its purest form can't work, communism in its purest form can work, but like all of them, the reason why they don't work, who rules over another human being? I heard you guys talk earlier. Well, if you have your own ruler and follower within one's kingdom, why would you leave it? Or at least have it in order. So this way, when you go to other people's kingdom, you'll respect it, consider it. But most people have never learned that. It doesn't matter how old they are in the physical sense, because people are 80 years old, they're still children in a lot of ways, but spoiled children at that point. So it's, like I said, I do that quite well on my own. As I'm in my car and I'm kind of talking to myself over there, because who better to question me is me who's been with me the whole time. I've never left the physical, in a sense that I've never left inside of these eyes or these senses. I've never been there. I'll use my avatar, my body, my glove, my suit to touch something, but I've always been here. And until people become aware, when you're in the car, you're already in a vessel and you never leave it. And it's not theoretical. It is what it is. But this is where we distract ourselves with stories. We can have our own topics within our own heads. Then, whether people do the whole ideal of prayer, peace, or meditation, we change the word. Inquiry, silence, and listen. Once a person does that, then they're inside. The outside world, as people call it, the rebirth process, is actually the death world. Everything outside shows it's dead. Your skin, your hair. That's why when they've done studies and a person that's able to be in a comatose state for 3 months, still able to exist because they're always getting fueled from within. But if a person tries to stay awake for a week, they'll die in a short period of time. More times than not, because it depends on their diet and mentally and emotionally before they go into those states. So we have it backwards. But the problem is, if there is a problem, because there could always be a solution, because that's why we have things called problems, opposed to this is what it is.
How
Go ahead.
how do you question yourself? How do you question yourself? Who is questioning who?
Well, at that point, Jaro, you're questioning everything surrounding it. So I'll give an example. When people say they question things or inquire about things, most people only look at the material. They don't realize reason, feeling, thoughts. Those are all things. And if you don't question those things, you're never going to find, this is, I forget how they say it in German. I don't even know the word. But anyway, all of those things are attached to the emotion. All of them. Not a single thing isn't attached to the emotions. So like a person that's a smoker, they're grieving, that's an emotion. Drinker, anger, that's an emotion. Same with reason. Most people use reason to justify their action opposed to questioning reason, whatever reason is. And any degree a person gets, it's just another excuse. But they won't know that until they challenged it. They'll defend it by telling somebody else, well, you don't understand. I said, I'm not here to understand you. That's your role. So now, to question all those things, then you question emotions. And you find out more times than not, your emotion has never been developed. Doesn't matter how old you are, you never develop it more times than not. So then the mind, which encompasses everything, that's what's called the aura, the ether, basically, you can question it then. So then when you do that, then the observer shows up. Until then, most people never get beyond the emotion. They're thinking they're using their mind, but it's actually their emotion that's running them ragged. And some people do it sarcastically, that's emotion, collectively, that's emotions. But until people start questioning that, as I was hearing Luis talk about certain things, humanity's not at that level. If anything else, humanity should learn the fact that we're learning a lot of things of past history. I heard Mike talk about it, and this is why I've always questioned all the different teachings out there. If history's been shown that it's been warped, or it's always been by the victor, whoever the victor is, they're usually the loser, because if they think that the victor, they're the losers. Because humanity should be as a collective, which we've never shown. Even in history, we've never shown that we're collective. The wars are already usually from groups, but we've never worked collectively. I would look forward to humanity all getting together. Let's all kill each other and bomb each other. Then we have something to learn. Then we could do the kindness. We can still learn something from those actions, but we never got to that point. So knowing that history's always been war, what guarantee would we have that the story of Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha were not also warped too? Are we going to say miraculously those things were just overcoming all the men of past, deceiving people? Let me change the word. It's not deceiving, misleading, hence the word sin, misleading. But we do that quite well on ourselves. We mislead ourselves. We get academics. For what purpose? Let alone for what end? I wouldn't go as far as the end. I would say, what purpose does it serve? Each individual moment. We're living in a time now where COVID's revealing what people have always done prior to COVID. It's always about them. People aren't talking about poverty. They're not really, as a collective, they're not talking about greed. They're not talking about shame, how genders have been mistreated both ends. They're just talking about how is COVID going to affect me. They think it's health. I had this the other day. A friend of mine was trying to tell me that I should take a vaccine. I said, but aren't you a smoker? So how can you promote health when you really don't really understand health? You're promoting commerce. That's why most people want to get all this. Let's get it going. You know, I've done enough research to realize the virus or vaccine, and they're both, hasn't proven otherwise either way. So I'm going to stay the status quo until it becomes mandatory, which again, it will, because most people, once you get enough people doing it, then everybody else has to follow suit. To me, this is right back up to all the different dogmas. And when I say dogmas, I'm not just talking about religion or state, I'm talking about science too. You start talking to a person that's a scientist, you bring in metaphysical, they quickly shut down because they don't understand how the unknown, because most of them learn how to become physicists, theorists. You got the word theorist, theo. Theo means God. R-Y in some definition, if we're using English language, means risen sun. So when a person says theory, do they really understand what they're saying? If you're realizing you're saying it in a meaningful language. If I was saying it in Greek, I wouldn't be using that word. Or Mandarin. or maybe some African language. And until people become aware that I'm a guy that's just yip-yapping for the sake of yip-yapping, because I realize most of humanity as a, I can't even say as a collective, are lost. Now, somebody might say to me, what about you? I said, forget about who I am. You should be concerned about challenging yourself. You know what I mean? I could be full of something, but it's still the role of each individual person to say, okay, I'll note that. Oh, why am I noting that? Well, we do give gauges and chakras. Why do we give gauges and colors to chakras? Those are just gauges, like numerical numbers. Mike's been in the industry of mathematics. But if people really started getting into the sounds and frequency and using the number 444 or the number 184, they realize there's frequency in each of the way we put those numbers in order. But humanity never gets at that. We're just too busy thinking, well, let's make life based on numbers or colors, which is fine. But those are only a couple of degrees. And how many guys will work most of their existence within the parameter of life and death? Most people don't realize that's what we're doing. Those are parameters, like the word laws. I thought it was land, but it's actually light, air, wind, and space. But we think those are man-made laws. No, men don't have rights to laws. Those are policies that we make. And nature, in its purest form, means wild. We've become so domestic that we forget. We don't want to be wild anymore. We don't want to be untamed. So I went on again, guys. But sometimes after a while, I realize humanity, I'm even here when I'm hearing the guys here talking, I'm like, where are we? Is this a Saturday morning so that, you know, Mike can tell me after he has to go for breakfast, or Luis says I got to go, but meanwhile, half an hour passes by. Like, you know, I don't even like hearing my own voice personally, but it's not my voice that I'm trying to hear. It's the message that I'm trying to share with myself.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
So what have we learned today? What?
Well, what we have learned from Dominic, I think, is we need to look at the mess that's within.
So how do we look at the mess within?
It's usually much more satisfying for us to go and correct someone else's mess rather than look at our own.
But in that
Looking at
sense,
our own makes us too uncomfortable.
but then in that sense, we're so attached, Mike, that the mess that we're talking about, as you mentioned about the mess from within, we're so distracted with the external world, we never ever address that inside. It's like most people think suffering is solely based on pain. No, that is so misleading, so misleading. The resistance to pain is only presents itself because most people are attached to pleasure. It's not even pleasure, it's attachments. Attachment, the mind. But we're so caught up in it. But why are we attached to the mind? Because the emotion part, the part that goes to the heart, our ancestors' blood that goes to it, are distracting us by leading us like puppets. And until people go inwards, you know, Mike, for example, he's a Christian. Has he ever examined it thoroughly? That it rips it to no end? And it's not just Christianity. I can say about Buddhism. I can say about science. People ever question that? Because then you start questioning things. Then when you start questioning, then and only then you say, okay, those have been outside, you know, buffets. Now I'm going to go inwards. Who's going to defend me now? You know, how many times I've had conversation with people, they quickly start defending. I said, but I'm putting myself under the bus because we got so caught up in the defense and attack mentality. We're trying to justify. You know, when you hear people talking, how do you think? What do you feel? That doesn't make any reason. There's no reason to that. They don't even hear themselves anymore. And that's why we have the word hear, ear, hear. What we do about listening, that's always an internal thing. We could share outside, but you're always hearing other people, but you're listening always from within. If a person ever gets into that state, they're constantly listening. Now, I'm listening to not this positive pleasantry, because that's where most people get caught up. Don't give me pleasantry. I don't judge, but give me pleasantry. That is its own judgment. Wisdom is about discernment. To be in that moment to realize whether or not I compliment you or rip a hole, who am I really doing it? Do I have to literally put a mirror in front of you and show you that I'm only doing it with myself? This is why when people play the game of debating, rebelling, revolting, masturbating is better done with the self. And people have to understand what the self is. Know thyself, not self-knowledge, self-knowing, self-realization. It's realizing the self, mastery of the self, helping the self, not the other way around. The self needs to know its place. And the self, what is it? It's the ego, it's the program. We all got conditioned from the day we were in the womb. And then from that point on, when we come to this form, we're constantly conditioning. Now, is there parameters of programs? Many. And they're always adding new ones. And some of them are actually affecting us more than it should, such as radio frequency, Wi-Fi, electricity, because there's frequency and sound and all of that. Same with our voice. The way I talk, I know if I had a different monotone voice, it might be more soothing as I'm saying piece of shit. Where other people will say, no, Dominic, I really don't like what I'm saying. Wait, what I'm saying it, how I'm saying it? Are you picking up all those little details of my facial expression? Or I have to remember that I'm in a male form? This is why when people, they can just shut it down and just hear, then something in the silence will present itself. And then it'll start saying, are you ready to really learn now? Because all this other shit you've been doing for 60 or 70 years, child's play. Now, I could be full of it. Sorry, go ahead. So then how are you ever going to get to the nowhere then, Jay? Because who's the one that's questioning the self? There's a reason why we say words. There's a reason. You know, even you can break down even the word reason if you really want to break it down. You know, until people become aware of that, it's the same stuff as well. We just happen to, we happen just to drop in a certain part of the world, whether Canada or America or Europe. But we never look at as a whole, in the sense, looking at other countries where in China, they're doing certain practices. In America, they're doing certain practices. We just think because we live in a country that we're with, or in America or Canada, we're representing. No, there's so many things going underneath that we don't even see. We're not indebted to federal notes. We're indebted to whoever gives us all this technology. And it's not humanity that does that crap. Anybody thinks otherwise, bring them to me. I'll say, listen, I'll give you all the elements. I'll give you a couple ones that aren't introduced yet. Put you on a stranded island. I'll come back and you tell me when you make steel or plastic. And even if they get to that point, who invented the language that you're describing the material with? Until then, there is no humbleness in humanity. It's all this arrogant pieces of But then again, I don't like calling people assholes. I like to call what comes out of them. And I'm talking about what comes out of my mouth is that stuff too. And until people actually do that investigation, they're never going to get to that point. People staying very calm. Really? Calm or sedated? Which one are you looking at? Because I'm not damn well sedated. And this is just me playing a game right now. I'm all acting. This is acting. I could be as calm as anything. I could be humorous as anything. You know, COVID to me is the biggest joke that's been played on humanity outside of those other wars. But yet they don't understand. Well, were they talking about chemical warfare a while back? And who are they? I wonder who those are. Well, any of us have any conversation with trillionaires and billionaires? Mike, have you met a trillionaire recently? John? Mike over there, have you ever met a billionaire? How do they move from one step to another? You know, to be a millionaire, to make 2 million or 30 million, even to get to 100 million, for some people, it's an accomplishment. But to get from billions to trillionaires, you got to bring in different stuff. Now, people will say, well, Dom, but they care about us. When has any government ever shown that they've cared about their citizens? They don't even talk about their citizens when they read those scripts. We're here to represent the people. They're not talking about that is that we put ourselves in classification. I don't think we're even citizens, but we choose to classify ourselves as citizens. You know, in the American Constitution, we the people in our prosperity, bloodlines. I mean, we're never talking about the slaves and the citizens of the nation. Never, and they never will. And if humans in America think otherwise, they're ignorant. Very well. Yes, Jay. Very much so. We're classified in their eyes as cattle, so we don't have rights. Now, if a person wants to take a plane because they're not taking a vaccine, they say, "But I have rights." I said, "When did they ever attach rights to commerce? Never, and they never will, because they understand how nature's laws work." That's why the vaccine is not patent with nature. It's patent from parts of it. It's chemical. I go to a doctor and nurse. I said, okay, that's what that you're giving to me. Or if it was me, do you understand chemistry? Or when a doctor says, I'm going to give you a vaccine, do you understand chemistry? Well, no. I said, so then you're a puppet. You just don't know it yet. Unless the person understands the doctor. doctor's a teacher and a physician's a healer, but not for outside world, for themselves. The old saying, and Mike, I don't know if you ever heard this, well, most people have, do no harm. That was never an external talking. That was an internal talking. Do no harm to oneself. Learn the self, teach the self, guide the self. You got a baby, that's yourself. What we do to other people, we violate them. And I'm doing it right now as I'm talking the way I am. Outside of that, guys, business as usual on this plane. Business as usual. We have a couple of moments. Mike has lived a career for 70 years. He's probably got a couple of golden nuggets to share. And I'm very grateful, Mike, by the way, because you put it in a different perspective. But at the same time, I've never really seen your passion. I've never heard your passion. Sorry, not seen. Seen, I can see too, because we live in this technology era where I can actually use my sight and my hear. I can't touch you, Mike. I can't taste you. I can't smell you on this technology. And those are just the 5 senses.
Come to one of our open mic nights sometime and hear me read a story. You may get some tinge of passion at that point. Well, mostly I write science fiction and fantasy stories. And since I'm doing open mic, I try to do short stories, some that I can get through in about 10 minutes.
I'm just going to say that out loud, Mike. That was an error on my part, Mike. That's me projecting it about passion. That's okay. Whether you should choose to share that or not, that's your concern for your well-being. So that's an error on my part, Mike. Sorry.
So, hey, Dominique. So, I think there's a lot of value in the way you express yourself. I hear you almost as a machine gun, with the sheer volume of things that you bring out, all of which we could spend a lot of time unpacking. Not to say that you shouldn't bring that to the conversation, but, and then, just with your last thing, I feel like you bring out the raw, but you're humble enough to allow the discussion to, maybe rein in something expressed that maybe needs to be adjusted. And so I really feel like, man, I could go back to the recording and make some notes off of the number of points you made, and there could be an entire Zoom call on each one of them. And gosh, there's probably 20 or more. Just in the way in what I'm taking away from this conversation, it's too much all at once to really deal with any of it in detail. Not to say that it's not good, but it would be my preference to maybe pause and dig into, some of your major points in more detail.
Well, the example, Mike, would be when Jesus, supposedly, let's play with the story of Jesus, when he changed over the money changers, and who knows what his rent looked like. See, when we write things down, with all the millions of books that we have, we really don't see some people how they actually get in that moment. Jesus, I can't see him. He might have been very sedated and like, okay, guys, you guys really shouldn't do the money changers and all that in God's house. Or he would have actually shown a moment of expressions where it was, justly so at that moment, but this is how we've been so sedated, like we're beat up human beings, where people think anger, people say to me, anger management. I said, did you go to joy management? Did you go to sadness management? Why would you want to control any emotions? Just don't become a professional at any particular one. You know, if you see a person laughing for an hour, my question is, why don't you set boundaries over yourself and remove yourself after 15 minutes? If you're not the lovey, tough-cheek kind of person, the person who's just grieving because they lost their loved ones, no sense of sitting there for more than an hour. If your specialty is, well, out there, I give them a little pat and move on. This is where people forgot their own boundaries. So my passion is my own attachments. That is my attachment, my passion. Now I could talk about my desires too, but that'll be me being more honest with myself, for myself. For other people, what does that make them feel better? That goes back to pleasantries. I feel good about because I go into a church or a synagogue. I said, but wait a second, isn't there a creator or source outside that built his own kingdom? Why do I have to go inside? I'm outside. I'm here to experience the existence of life and death. And who am I speaking when I say the existence? Am I just playing with words? Probably. But that's for me to question for myself. When I share with other people, it's not debatable. People think it's debatable. I said, really? So you're going to be in my senses and you're going to tell me how I perceive the object that we call the sun? Well, no. I said, then you're just you're pissing your own opinions out. Carry a damn mirror, be done with it. It's like when people talk about, oh, well, that person's a narcissist or psychopath or a sociopath. I said, those are just extreme cases of the emotionals underdeveloped. And they actually use that as a weapon. But most people will marry those kind of people and then say after, oh, poor me. I said, you're using your underdeveloped emotion now as a weapon too. Because most people don't realize with all those strings, and this is the way I visualized it, all the strings of the senses, feelings, and all that. And then once you realize that all those strings are attached to the emotion, who's the puppet master's hand? Who's controlling all of that? Who is controlling the emotion that's not developed?
Yeah. There is asleep somewhere. We have an overflow of mics.
Am I the only one that dropped out? Am I the only one that dropped out?
No, the meeting runs in 40-minute segments and then apparently is automatically cut off. And Nigro has to reinstate the meeting at every instant.
Man, the last one only felt like 5 minutes.
Maybe they have changed the value of 40 minutes. Either that or Dominic causes time to accelerate.
Did Dominique come back on? He's got such a broad number of things that he's tracking. I just really would enjoy to, maybe capture that in some particular order and deal with those things in more detail. I mean, I recognize value in all the points.
In other words, you want to stop a thought and examine it rather than having it run over you.
Yeah, I don't have a big enough buffer to recall things, at that volume to, so I'm pretty simple, I guess.
I understand what you're saying.
But not to say that I don't want to bring it all in and examine it all.
But I think that the thread that connects most of what Dominic is talking about is this matter of self-examination, of getting into our own minds and in some sense challenging ourselves. Well, you know, when I look at a news article on the computer and I read a headline and I feel my blood pressure go up, to me at that moment, if I'm awake, that's a signal that I ought to be examining what's going on in my mind. Am I actually, in some sense, thinking about what I'm looking at, or am I having my buttons pressed? That's a simple example of when you need to examine yourself, at least so I think.
Some just reflections that I'm left with as we, you know, kind of, you know, just, you know, toss all these ideas up that kind of challenge me are the focus on self needs to in part have the goal of a better collective, and not and to make sure that we're not doing anything that you know, encourages like ostracizing or, you know, something that's too focused on me for the sake of me. You know, I mean, me becoming better, it should be for the sake of, you know, future generations or society in the here and now. So like self doesn't always sound like a good word to me, just because of how much selfishness there is. And so, you know, self doesn't automatically mean selfishness, but we need to make sure that we're not, you know, not unaware of the risk that human nature, you know, brings. You know, so working on self for a purpose of others is the self that I'm comfortable with, or that I feel like I'm, I don't know, like say called to focus on. What was the other thing? Oh, and then there's something that I mentioned earlier that I feel like has been, there's evidence in today, and it goes back to like vision. And I look at Elon Musk and how he's you know, built his empire. You know, the world's very excited about space. You know, there was a vision cast, and you know, regardless of what talent and passions or whatever else, you know, he's built a lot of energy around a big vision. And I don't know, I just feel like in today's political world, popularity is the goal of our leaders. And in popularity, you're always looking back, you're always, you know, checking the pulse, and you're not really leading when you're trying to be popular. And so I don't know, I can't let go of the idea of how important it is to have vision and actual leadership instead of popularity. You know, the popularity, when it, you know, can be manipulated by whoever's controlling mass media and, you know, the biggest messages. And you know, whereas vision is something that, you know, establishes a point in the future, and everybody can, you know, kind of assess whether or not you're oriented towards that goal. And I just, really bothers me that we don't seem to have a lot of vision, and that we're so focused on popularity. And of course, you know, you bring in politics. Politics has been, you know, extremely contentious as of recently. You know, politicians, they just lie to be popular, and you don't see career politicians or, you know, professional politicians delivering on any promises. You only see them seeking popularity for the sake of control. But control without vision, without leadership, is just such a dangerous thing in my mind.
You know, I think your concerns are, in some sense, are very much like Dominic's concerns, but you're seeing it, as it were, from a somewhat different angle, with a somewhat different light displayed on it. But basically, I think both you and he are concerned about, in some sense, self-work, work on the mind. Vision, after all, in part, is an important part of what goes to make up our minds.
So with that, you know, I guess I agree, but what vision that unites for a purpose is, I guess, what I'm after. And, you know, it doesn't have to be just one vision that everybody is, you know, co-opted into, but the majority of people should associate themselves with some goal that, where there's leadership, and that the resources that are brought to bear are dedicated towards. And I just see a lot of, you know, a lot of nearsightedness and easily manipulated emotional topics in our society, where I feel like we're becoming more chaotic instead of establishing better order as far as, you know, how we dedicate effort and resources.
I don't think that we're necessarily getting worse. I think we are in one of those moments when we are becoming more aware of this sort of dysfunction. We hit those spots every once in a while, and I think we hit them more and more often and more painfully as history goes on.
So what if in that, you know, kind of observation, if history kind of repeats itself, what's the most likely, you know, way that this plays out? I mean, what do you recall? What have you seen?
Well, all I know to say at this particular point is that people will begin to solve some of these problems and straighten things out when conditions become sufficiently uncomfortable, when they are in enough pain and it's wide enough spread that they begin to really think about what's going on, both in the world outside and in their own minds.
Are there parts of the globe, would you say that there's parts of the globe that miss the opportunity to correct and are now stuck in extreme circumstances that they can't get out of? And would you think that there might be a risk of that in our country?
Of course, there's a risk of that in our country, but that happens, I think, probably in almost every history, that at some point the society or the nation or the tribe or whatever crawls into some dead end, and maybe they get out and maybe they just go away. But we are continually having these sorts of jams and then explosions. That's what things like the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, the rise of the Nazis to power. That, in effect, is what is this sort of business of blundering into dead ends and then getting out in an explosion. Sometimes people get out more easily than that. If you go and look, for example, at the history of England after the Napoleonic Wars, they came fairly close to a revolution, but they redid their government to the extent of admitting more people, a broader slice of the citizenry into power. And that helped damp down some of the emotions that could otherwise have led to an explosion like the French Revolution. But they had the French Revolution as a horrible example in front of them to help them think about the way that people felt and the way societies worked. I think that Trump, in some sense, although I think he was a terrible president, I think in some sense he might be considered as a blessing in the sense that he forced us to think more deeply about a lot of problems in society.
When it comes to the felt need for change, when consequence is great enough and the correction that society seeks as a result, would you agree that in a more technologically advanced society, the ability to revolt becomes more challenging?
I don't think it's that simple. I think it depends in part on the way the technology exists in that society. Back in the early part of the 20th century, the first half of the 20th century, there was tremendous enthusiasm for electronics, mechanics, science. You had a whole lot of people who got into those things just on their own. And the first heavier than air flying machine was built by two guys who ran a bicycle shop. One of the great advantages that the Americans had in the war against the Japanese was you had so many people across the country, so many young men who had an acquaintance with things like cars, internal combustion engines, electricity that was greater than that of their opponents in the Japanese army. We are starting to see certain signs that we may begin to spread some of that knowledge around again the way we did during that first half of the 20th century. We're starting to see things like people working with 3D printers, doing things like printing houses. We see in the publishing industry this tremendous explosion of people going out and self-publishing books. They figured out they don't need necessarily a huge publishing company to do it. I think that you need to consider not only the technology, but the extent to which the technology becomes accessible to large numbers of people, and to the extent that they can make use of it and experiment with it, and to the extent that it becomes impossible for small groups, such as large corporations, to control what they're doing. I'm sure there must be some good stories floating around in that. I have one or two ideas for them already, but it'll take a while.
This will be one of your open mic night stories?
No, I suspect, that those stories will probably turn out to be long stories, so I'm not sure how suitable they are for open mic. Occasionally, I take something like a novel and I will read a small segment of it if it fits together nicely. But mostly I try to do short stories for open mic.
Back to the idea of revolution. What are your thoughts on preserving, I guess, the rights of the citizens, as far as having a means to revolt, or is there other means to revolt? Should there be a more tyrannical environment in the future?
We have no idea what's going to happen. All we can do at this point is go for what seems reasonable to us and in general causes the least pain. Whether or not revolutions work or not, they can turn out to be extremely disruptive and destroy your institutions, or they can be revolutions which preserve many of the institutions and carry them along. It's just, totally open to all sorts of possibilities. What is very important, though, is when you're approaching a period of stress which might result in revolution, is what are the ideas which are in the air? What kinds of visions are people looking at? And secondly, are there any groups of people that are organized to promote visions? I think that when you get one of these revolutions, if you have a government which is repressive before the revolution and is sufficiently capable of destroying all of its opposition, then once the revolution occurs, it becomes much harder to build society because you don't have any groups with any necessarily well-laid plans. And you may get something far worse after the revolution than before it. Anyway, I'm going to let go at this point and go and eat some breakfast. And it was good seeing you people. And I see I will be leaving Mike and 2 instantiations of Hyro. Yes. Yeah, that was almost right. Anne came at the very beginning. Otherwise, you got it perfect. Yes. It shouldn't be a battle, it's a marriage. Or use it to level a table down under one leg. I'll tell you when it comes out. I think it will come out fairly soon. And I'm working through this company, Ingram Spark, which puts it into all sorts of distribution channels. I think they probably go through, they try to go through Amazon, but Amazon sometimes doesn't particularly try to make other people's books accessible. They probably go through from Barnes and Noble, and I think there's some other distribution points also, and I'll try to find out what those are. Well, there is a great deal of difficulty when you're trying to find the right words on to describe a superscript or a subscript or a subscript of a subscript or a matrix, which is, let's say, a 3x5 matrix and all its entries. I'm not sure how you put that into words. When you get a copy of the book, I want you to tell me how to pronounce some of the more complex formulas, which involve things like double summations and multiple indices, as well as fractional quantities inside. Anyway, I'm going to leave you guys now. It was good seeing you.
Have a good day, Mike.
You too, Mike. Jairo, take care. Bye.
Hey, Hyro. Hey, you talked with Don the other night, huh? Don? Oh, what's going on there? I was fishing last night, so I wouldn't have been able to do it anyway. Oh, weird. Yeah, I was down trying to catch a fish last night. All I caught was salad. Yeah, I reeled in a lot of salad. But how's Don doing? How's Don doing? He's very secretive. I gotta figure out why so secretive, I guess. He's cryptic. Hey, I think my brother Tim's gonna leave the area, and I guess he's got one of your tennis rackets. So you guys need to get together one more time so that you can get your tennis racket back. Oh yeah, I think he was telling me yesterday that his calf is he's got like muscle spasms in his calf he can't get rid of. Yeah. So you guys take care of your mom on the weekends the whole time, and then you have like nurses during the week or something? I don't know, but I think that the goal that a lot of people share is how to have freedom without chaos, and how to have some level of order without losing freedom. Yeah, and still preserve freedom, or however you want to put it. That's the tension I feel like we live in. I think that's why vision is so important, because a vision, or multiple grand visions that have some merit enough to for society, large portions of society to buy into, bring about order in the sense of freedom. In other words, people are willing to be a part of achieving a vision, but within the creative or the areas that they have passion, abilities, skills. I think it's so important to cast good vision, and to have a vision that's able to endure. And just my read on our political environment is we're too focused on this very volatile popularity thing that doesn't really have a real foundation and a real aim. And by contributing to that environment, I think we set ourselves up to be vulnerable, because you got to know where you're going, and I feel like a lot of what people are buying into is very nearsighted, and they don't know what it leads to. Some of the theories are, that there's a big push to dumb down society, and there's a big push to ensure the vulnerability of society, and then you have a society that's easily manipulated and controlled. To make society more vulnerable so that it is more easily manipulated and controlled. There's certainly some exciting things going on in that realm. I don't really buy into the idea that the virus and the vaccines are the biggest concerns as far as how to, you know, what threats exist comes to freedom, I think that it's that the vaccine and the viruses and all the political biases associated with that are a distraction. Not to say that it's not real and doesn't need to be dealt with responsibly, but I think that for that to be the sole focus is a distraction. I don't know if I guess I'm blessed with this. My wife is immune compromised, so I do have to pay attention to this issue for her sake. But I would say that the majority of people's immune systems are, function quite well, and preventing illness is an unrealistic goal, but to prevent death, I think is certainly more achievable. So I don't know if is it realistic for us to have goals where, regardless of what variant evolves, that nobody gets sick? I don't know that that's realistic or even a good goal. I think at some point, you've got to transition back to your natural ability to fight disease. And if you, it seems to me that if you do that through pharmaceuticals, that, you might be Hey, that 40-minute, is this round 4? Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I don't know. I wouldn't want to get away from our bodies, depending on our body's ability to adapt and overcome by the overuse of pharmaceuticals. That ignores the immune compromised, which I don't want to do. But I do believe that that's the minority. And so, maintaining the bigger picture, it's just less of a concern when you look at society as a whole, to me. I might be a little naive because there are rumors that, certain engineering of disease can target certain nationalities. I like the unique DNA structure of different, nationalities and demographics. So, I don't want to put my head in the sand completely, but I would say that as far as things that could make society better, things we need to be working towards, just a little bit lower. I would make it the most critical thing. Oh, yeah, walk me through Joel's conversation. I missed what Joel was saying. New Scotland? You know that means New Scotland, right? Yeah. So you think that there's some kind of social engineering going on to reinforce compliance regardless of rationale? Or some of the participants see that? Just, like to me, that's the issue. I mean, like I get the concern a little bit of whether or not there's social engineering going on that don't lead people to where compliance and something can go too far. But to me, that's like wearing a mask, not wearing a mask is a very little threat. It seems more like a distraction, and when that becomes a hot button bullet issue, an issue that people are willing to die over, take a bullet for. I just think that's evidence of, the dumbing down of society. I mean, bigger picture things is what matters. Whether or not you put on a mask or not, the it's pretty insignificant. I mean, you know, if you and I were talking with masks on or not, that really doesn't change our conversation or anything. So maybe I'm being dull, maybe you know, being conditioned, and maybe having that opinion, you know, could be too much, you know, to a greater detriment. But I don't see it. Vegas. See, that's, to me, that is the problem. This has become a political issue, and mass media started this whole thing because in the very beginning there wasn't much of a political divide between, you know, a group that might say, yeah, you know, like let's use protective measures. Oh no, let's not infringe on. But media worked really hard to try and create two camps and exploit the extremes. And then you know, there's a lot of weak-minded people that just want to become members of one camp or the other and don't even, you know, look at things objectively anymore. And so, you know, why would the media and why are people so dumb to allow a personal choice become a political just, you know, position? You know, how is it that, you know, left-leaning people are, you know, say mask Nazis, and right people are, you know, pointing out the fascism of mask wear? It's like, that's not even an accurate description of the situation, but somehow it's been engineered into society that those are the two camps that need to exist. I mean, right, I'm fine with masks. Yeah, I wear a mask more times than not, because of my concern for my wife, but, you know, and concern for others. But this whole self thing is, you know, causing people not to care. And, you know, the objectivity is lost because of the affinity for a political party, and both sides are guilty of it. Very disappointing. Yeah, we can't lose objectivity, and there has to be, more than just, I don't know, the world's gone mad. People are on a mission of condemnation instead of reconciliation, in general. I don't doubt that the reason why this is here is a result of biological engineering. I do believe that the Wuhan lab and whoever was involved in the research, to include our own government, has a hand in what we're dealing with. But again, the condemnation doesn't solve anything. And if you just want to get hung up on, where to place blame, instead of, how to get out of this, and, where do we go from here? I think, it's an unhealthy distraction. Certainly punitive responses, should be, brought there if you can conclude, some culpability. But it's really hard to punish near peer nations if you're also complicit in the research that brought it about. But the point of punitive action is to prevent future behavior. So we can't allow ourselves to become nearsighted. I think that's the biggest challenge is, okay, we need to realize, we got to have some aim, and we need to be working towards that aim. And that way we can't be manipulated. And the question is what you've seen how focused the world is on America. I don't know. I think about the old saying, "The pen is mightier than the sword," and somehow the pen is all about the American story, or in large part. So what happens in America has a heavy influence on the world. And right now, I see America as just being very out of sorts. Rest of the world follows. We owe it to ourselves and the world to maybe have all this energy into some productive energy. To achieve something great. Or things, and not just vie for control. What do you want to do with it? You still there? Can you hear me? Oh, maybe. Got it. So what were you going to capitalize on? What were you going to draw some information on? Right. Well, I think that what Mike was saying, and I completely agree, is that there's consequence for making the wrong choices or going down the wrong path. And that consequence brings about the felt need for change. And so you can only get so far out of line before the felt need for change is experienced on a large enough scale to motivate people to embrace some form of reaction. My concern with that is we automate and I see a consolidation of the messaging. I see a consolidation of power and consolidation of power without a communicated vision that allows me to feel comfortable with what you're going to do with that power, and evidence to show that you have the appropriate checks and balances in place. This is street and what you do, what you've done, that stuff doesn't sit well with me. So that's where I feel like to double down on the ability to revolt becomes necessary, because you're. Oh yeah, this is great. Thanks. Oh, did I cut out again? Oh shoot, I need to find. Yeah. Oh, did I cut out again? But Anyway, what did you capture? What did I manage to get through? I guess I just see a consolidation of power without a well-disclosed vision for how that power is going to be used, and it makes me nervous because when someone just wants to be popular and doesn't want to use the position of power for a particular purpose, it's like, what are you doing there? You know, and so the idea of putting a populist in the position of leadership instead of a leader in the position of leadership doesn't sit well with me. And so what we have right now is we have a bunch of populists controlling our country, and there's not really a shared vision that will allow people to unite and apply their passions, skills, and abilities to an aim. And so we just have a controlled people who don't even know the direction that their leadership wants to go in, but yet somehow the seduction is so powerful that you know, it's a very strong grip on society. We have right now. Oh boy, dang! I can't believe I'm cutting out so bad. I think we were talking about vision, or I was going to say that, you know, there needs to be a strategic aim, big picture. Well, the thing is that's the beauty of it is some things will come under criticism, and some things will endure, and some things will be abandoned. And the things that should endure, I think, survive. The things that you need to realize that are threats are the controlling of information and the ignoring not paying attention to how much deception is going on. If you agree on a vision, if somebody can tell the best story in private, they have no intention of meeting what they doing what they sold you on. That should be alarming. Yeah, made clear. Because it's not about domination, it's about creating the appropriate environment. I don't think a strategic aim should be kept secret at all, because it to think that if your strategic aim doesn't have merit, if it's not something you can probably advertise locally, that this is who we are and this is what we're after, then it's probably not a good strategic aim. So like an example of a bad strategic aim would be some vying for global domination with no real, if that was your only aim, then yeah, you'd want to keep that quiet from your competitors or your enemies, because obviously they would want to guard themselves against that. But that would make it for a good strategic aim, because dominating is not really a goal. It's what do you want? What kind of environment do you want to bring about? And if you're saying, okay, I'm going to bring about a certain environment in an area that I control, and people like what they see, they may join you in that and say, you know what, I really like that, and this area that I control, I want it to look more like that as well. So to me, like having a strategic aim that has merit is something that needs to be made plain so that your citizens can buy into it. And so, I don't know, those that are watching, may buy into it as well. I guess we have that in the Bill of Rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? That's the underlying foundation of what should be ensured through the establishment of our government. Things that promote life, liberty, and an environment that is fertile in a sense that you can pursue happiness. decisions within that should try to safeguard that strategic aim. And there's higher fidelity goals that fit within that. I would say so. And it's it would be a sanity point, so that as you introduce more specific goals, they need to complement those broader statements. So, like the idea of vaccinations and the mask. Okay, if you really want to, take a look at that particular item, like liberty and pursuit of that particular issue or another, better lend itself to those, 3 pillars. You could have a pretty good debate on which way you would lean on mass and vaccinations. Probably mass and vaccinations wins out. Conflict or complement? Yeah. I mean, obviously it could be hotly debated, but again, to get your personal, to get selfishness out of the way, and you look at it holistically. Yeah, I mean, if you look at life, which way are you moving? I guess you could argue that this is poison, and therefore it should be avoided at all costs because it threatens life. Or you could look at it as therapeutics, and therefore it preserves life. Okay, well, I don't know how far you get with that. Liberty, obviously, there's people that don't have liberty because they're worried about their poor health, and then there's the people who are in good health that don't want to be encumbered in any way whatsoever. And then pursuit of happiness is more a personal responsibility. The government can't make you happy, but they can offer you an environment that allows you to pursue happiness so long as it doesn't encumber somebody else in a, I guess, overtly negative way. And I guess that's why this is such a good hot-button issue. And so those that would like to see this country torn apart, because there's opportunity in chaos. Those that would like to create opportunity by bringing about chaos, probably have looked at this and at that level and said, you know what, we need a good political divide right here, and this is one where we could have an irreconcilable difference between the two parties, the two camps that we're trying to keep into. We got a left and a right. Let's exploit this. Let's ensure that chaos exists in the last frontier of So for us to play into the hand of allowing us to be irreconcilably divided over an issue that there's no clear winner, we just can't allow for that, because in the end, we're the losers if we allow for that. So we concede. We have the empathy of the person in poor health that we got to be mindful of, and we have the family with 5 young children that need to be able to experience freedom and not be so indoctrinated in some form of paranoia. And so, both. I mean, can you imagine if you had 2 teenage daughters living in your house that have this immense need for social involvement, and you had to keep them locked down in a manner that was consistent with someone of very poor health? Your household would be a mess. At the same time, I mean, I guess, we got immune compromised to, if people would just, who knows for how long, but if people would just be super diligent for an extended period of time until this thing's behind us, maybe the world would look different. Those people have a legitimate argument. Divide our country across the 2 lines and let's create an impasse. Let's destabilize America with this issue. Oh, all right. What's it about? Is that a forecasted possibility? If you can overcome your limitations, is that something that is so worthy of lordship? If only someone with that talent could gain the followership of the rest of the world, right? Or do we need lots of those people and then somehow those people each other as central? But can you have harmony when there's a battle for control? So does it come back to the right individual doing the saving? it's interesting because the part of what you're saying is in complete agreement of, you know, my faith system when Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. The way has been communicated, and the kingdom of heaven is at hand if people are willing to adopt the way. And it sounds like you're going into a 16-week class to discover the way. If we adopt the way, yeah, is our way. If the way becomes our way, then, you know, we experience heaven on earth. Yeah, that's why in Christianity it says that in order to be saved, you have to be born again. In other words, die to self and become alive in Christ. Then you do become part of the way. The self? Yeah. Which is the symbol of baptism. You know, if you think about it, new birth, when you came into this world, you were in water. You came out of water. And the symbol of baptism is just out of the womb again with a new identity. All right, I hope you enjoy it. Have a great day, Ira.